When we last left Bob, Bob was doing some research for a paper when he discovered Publish or Perish and was able to quickly and easily find all the sources that he needed for his research. Now, Bob has struck academic gold in his research. He's found brilliant ideas, made groundbreaking insight, really the stuff that can win him either some academic awards or more than likely bragging rights at the local Starbucks. Unfortunately, it happens. The wall of citation, endless references, just an abyss that we all call APA formatting. He pours his heart and soul into a paper only to get it back with a bad grade. Not because his research was bad, no. He had an amazing research paper, but he misplaced a few commas, forgot to italicize something, called a report a journal, a book, a conference paper, or any of the other 50 million pieces of APA minutia that we academics love to talk about. Everything from missing DOIs, URLs that should have been included, are all incredibly frustrating for Bob because there's just so many. At last count, I mean, there was probably 4,387 different types of sources and ways to cite them. Thankfully, Bob's friend introduced him to PaperPile, which is a reference manager that Bob has learned to love. There are many available, but Bob has settled on PaperPile. Bob copies a DOI or a URL into PaperPile, which does the heavy lifting, keeps a copy of his PDF, a searchable abstract, and Bob just sits back, writes his paper, and when he needs to cite something, presses a button, inserts the in-text and the reference all at the same time with perfect consistency. If he ever needs to make a change in the reference, he updates it in PaperPile, refreshes his document, and now all of his citations perfectly match what they're supposed to. Now, Bob is free. He's free to focus on the quality of his research instead of wrestling with the semicolons and italics of APA. Need to change style? No problem. We click a button, we go from APA to Chicago, back to MLA, and then finally back to APA depending on the courses that he's writing for. Bob can spend his time studying, learning, and pursuing a PhD for what he really wanted to. Knowledge, right? The ability to advance his field through research and study, along with now having a perfectly formatted reference in his library that he can forever research.
All right, welcome to the second installment of Bob Does College. So today I want to talk about reference managers. So there are a lot available. For instance, my university offers a subscription to Academic Writer, which allows you to manage references and format papers. There's also Zotero, which is very popular. Mendeley and Note, there's a ton of them. But what I found that fits best with my particular workflow is something called PaperPile. So it's about $30 a year. It's not terrible, and definitely one of the things that are worth trying out. So you can use it for 30 days for free, and after that, you got to pay the subscription. But there are a couple really good features. So it has plugins for Word and Google Doc. So I personally write in Google Docs and then transfer it over into Perla to do all the formatting, which has its own kind of issues, but you can also write in Microsoft Word, so it'll work even if you're forced to use a template. And what's really nice about it is it's essentially one button citing. So whenever you have a thought that you need to cite in text, you press the PaperPile button, it shows up a little box, you type in the author, hit the cite button, and it will add it in there for you. This is really important when you start getting 30, 40, 50 different citations in paper. And as you're going through your reference list, you notice that there was a mistake. Maybe you mistyped the author's name. Instead of having to go through and find every instance of that, you change the reference in PaperPile, update it, and it will fix all of the errors for you. It also does complex citations, multiple authors, stuff like that. Now, there's still nuance involved, and you will find little quirks to it, but it beats having to do everything manually, and then even worse, keeping track of it. The other nice thing is it's a repository. So once you have a paper, study, conference, whatever loaded into it, it stays organized forever and it's searchable. So, for instance, if you're writing about, I don't know, the economic sanctions in Russia, you can type those keywords in and it'll find every paper that you've previously added. So if you've forgotten a thought, you can go back and find it. Since the PDFs are actually attached in PaperPile, all the highlights, the notes that you take, everything stays synchronized. So you don't have to keep anything on your desktop anymore. Should you need to, you have the option to export a clean PDF, a highlighted PDF, and one of my favorite things, just an annotated PDF. So it'll only print out the highlights that you've added. So I'll give you a quick walkthrough of my PaperPile. So in this case, I share this with my wife. So we've got a couple different types of stuff here. But for instance, like let's say you're writing like my last paper I wrote about, for instance, the pilot shortage. So I've got this study here that we'll check. Or actually, we'll find an even better one that I know has a lot more highlights in it. Okay, so let's look at this guy. So we can open the PDF, and it'll show you this here. But you'll notice it has all of my highlights in there already. So I never have to go back and try and find what I thought was interesting about the paper. It's just in there. So I guess this had less than I thought in there. But you can also, when you print this, it will not only print it out in a proper author title format, but it'll print either the blank PDF or you can go and do annotations or PDF with annotations. But this is my favorite. And if we look at it, this only prints out the highlighted section. So you can essentially make yourself like a master document that has all of the things that you care about in different studies. Citing things is one of the most frustrating parts, I think, of any type of research, because there's just so many ways to do it. And when I mean that, I'm not saying there's so many correct ways. There's one correct way, but so many different options. Right? You've got research journals, you've got books, you've got conferences, government reports, all these different things. And you can see this is highlighted here. So for instance, this shows this is a conference paper. When we open up the reference itself, we see down here is the proper citation. You will need to double check these when you make them. There's a little nuance as far as how it extracts the information when it does the paper, which I'll show you here in a minute. But we've essentially got all of the important stuff, and you just type it in here, right? So in this case, we've got the DOI and the URL, in this case twice, so we don't actually need this one. So we'll delete it. You can see that it updates the reference accordingly. Now, you'll notice that there is no DOI at the end of this. This is a section that in Google Doc or in Word, you let it know how you want it to dump out. So one of the coolest features is you don't have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So for instance, let's go look for something here on Google Scholar. Let's say our study today is the weather effects in China, for instance. All right, so now we see all of our papers, and we've got a cool little button. So let's say we like this one here. This is a Springer article, so we know it's a legit paper. We just click the button. It's saved to my library. Now, okay, it's from ResearchGate, so make sure you only pick, I guess they add another one. So we'll cite the actual one here on Springer. So it does not always, if you've got it behind a paywall, which Springer is, it won't necessarily pull the PDF every single time, but you can get around that and add manually, right? So now we see at the very top, we've got both of these. We see that it's properly inputted. So we'll take a look here at the editing. We see it's got the title in proper title case or in proper formatting case. So it'll give you a little check mark here if, for instance, we capitalize weather. So it's going to ask you if you want a fixed case. Be careful with this one. Sometimes it will lowercase things that you should keep in uppercase. For instance, if you're citing a part of a law, the word part might be lowercase, so you'll have to go back and look. But it populates the correct journal, the complete journal title, the publisher, the date published, issue article, and the page numbers. So you do have to double check this. So I always recommend popping open the PDF. And now we have, in this case, it did pull the actual article. So we can look here and we can see, okay, this is correct or it's not correct. This one actually did an amazing job of doing it. So we can even see that the names are in proper order, right? Last name, comma, first name, multiple authors, and we've got this paper here. So we have access to it. We've got everything that we need. If we make a change, so let's say there was another author, his name was John Smith, right? We can add it and it will automatically fix it here. And according to this guy right now, it's APA 7, but you can also change this to anything that you want. We've got like 70 something styles in here, along with this button, which I recommend leaving checked to always include the DOI if it has a DOI. So why does this matter? So this is really important. If we're writing a paper, so we'll pop something open in Google Docs. All right, so we're writing some sample text, right? But now we want to make sure that this is cited correctly. So previously you've got all your notes, right? Maybe you have an Excel table, like a caveman, right? With 4,000 different papers and citations and stuff. We don't actually need that here. So we simply tap on the PaperPile icon or hit Control-Alt-P. We can insert the citation, and then we'll look up weather. So we can search by title, author, whatever else, and we pop this guy in here. So now we have a perfectly cited citation, right? We'll do another one. And we'll add the other one that we added in here. Oops. So this was the other author that we had. Okay, but let's say this was a narrative citation, right? So and you'll notice that these are written kind of funny. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that, but it will properly format them. So let's say it's a narrative citation. So in this case, we don't need the author, so we can suppress the author and it will just leave the date. We can also add a page number if we want. So in this case, let's just say it's page 12. We'll add the citation, and we're good to go. Sometimes, especially as you get to graduate research, you'll have to synthesize, right? Synthesize essentially means find all the people saying the same stuff, right? So we can do the same thing, and we'll add a citation in here. And in this case, both of these authors said that. So we'll add the first citation. We've got the second citation. And let's say there's 3. So now we've got 3 citations. We add them. Again, it looks kind of funny in here. No big deal, right? So now that we've done doing this, we will format them. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to think, which is why we have coffee. And bam, we've got our perfectly formatted citations. When I say perfect, I mean these are exactly the way that you put them. So for instance, these are journal articles, so the italics stuff is correct. In this case, we've got a volume and an issue number. We've got the page numbers. If you do not check to make sure that these are correct, it's not a big deal, right? So let's say that you've just finished writing a 30-page paper with 200 citations, and like this Dune guy was really awesome. So you cited him a bunch, but then you realize, man, these page numbers are wrong, right? So that would normally mean that you have to go back in and fix everything. Or actually, you know what? Let's just say that we misspelled Chen. That's probably a more realistic one that where you would need to make a lot of corrections. So let's say that it's actually these guys are reversed. Not a big deal. We can go back. We see this citation here. And let's say it was actually Chan. We'll save the citation, head back to our document, reformat. Again, drink some coffee for the wait, and this will take longer. And now we see that it has fixed Chan here, here, and here, right? So you do not have to go back and keep track of like 50 million different references when you make a change. You can also see it did a great job here with the synthesis citation, right? So we've got a bunch of authors, so it did it right. We've got Chan et al., dot, comma, year, semicolon, same thing. We've properly used the ampersand instead of the word and down here, this is also correct, provided that your formatting is correct. Let's say that we messed up and we actually needed it to be in, let's say, MLA format, right? Well, we just type in MLA here, and now we can actually change all of these at once just by hitting update. I'm not going to do it because I'll mess up my custom version of APA. So you can actually write custom scripts. So for some of these, I've got my own to go through. Now, for some of you, you may have university-specific things like highlighted or active URLs. You'll have to do these manually. Little nuance there. The manual ones, every time you update, you'll have to redo them, which can be a big pain. So what I do is I just comment them out in Word or highlight them and let me know that that's what I need to do. Again, it's not perfect, especially not when you're dealing with non-standard stuff. All right, so now let's take a look at the Word plugin. Okay, so let's take a look at the Word plugin, I guess is the right word. So here I've got a standard kind of template that some of you may or may not need to use. Actually, before we dive into PaperPile, a couple things to kind of note. When you do templates, sometimes they will disable proofing for some reason, and they're not very formatting friendly as much as they try. So for instance, if you copy and paste the title in here, you see how insert is regular case and shortened is title case. So that can create some issues for you. Same thing with proofing. They turn that off. I don't know why, but you'll have to go back in through your options settings to turn on all the proofing and then reconfigure it in the way that you want. You can kind of work around it if you use Grammarly. But with all the AI nonsense that goes around, I try to not use Grammarly at all. The irony being that it winds up making you a worse writer just trying to avoid all the AI nonsense than it was a few years ago before AI kind of became the cheating tool that most people think it is, even though it's really not. But we will now work and we'll see here. So we've got a standard template here, so we can do the same thing that we normally do and add our text. In this case, it's just a different little area. So the first thing you're going to want to do, especially if you're using a template, it resets all of your settings. So you'll change your citation style to match whatever it is that you need. So with Word, it needs to load a little helper so we can see it defaulted back to Chicago. We'll just need to change it back to APA and ensure that we include the DOI. You can also check some of the document settings. Nothing to worry about now, but you can actually embed a lot of these citations, like hard code them into your document. So we've got our default settings loaded. So same thing here, right? You've written your sentence. Now you just add a citation. And since this is kind of an issue that I'm dealing with now and trying to get major clarification on, we can cite multiple authors. So in this case, this is probably the most complex one I've run into. We've got a lot of Smiths. They all have different co-authors and different years and all that good stuff. And you'll also know that once you've cited something in a single document, it's going to remove anything that you have up here from this list, so you won't double cite. So we've got 4 Smith groups. They all have different years, and they all have a different author cohort. So we'll insert the citation here, and we can see that it's already done based on APA, which, depending on how you interpret it, it will require the initials for the differing first authors, even if they're different years, right? Because the point is ambiguity in your reference list. So, for instance, this GM Smith et al. Has different co-authors. They're written in different years. So I'm trying to get more clarification on that. It's probably the most complicated one that I've had. But in this case, it loads them in here. So we've got that author group. Another kind of thing to look out for is when you're citing organizations. So in APA, the first use, depending on the organization, you may or may not have a complete citation. So for instance, the GAO, in subsequent citations, since this isn't really a common acronym, so you shouldn't just write GAO, you'll need to add the brackets yourself and then change it later in all the other ones. This is kind of one of those annoying nuances because you'll have to do this manually. Same thing for other common ones. So I'm in an acronym heavy field. So this definitely becomes an issue, but so we've got 3 here. And we'll go ahead, and since we're dealing with the Smith issue now, we'll reference each Smith separately, in different lines and see what it gives us. You'll have to go through and kind of organize some of these yourself, but that's okay because you have to do it anyway. So we're just dealing with the majority of problems. So right now, and this is kind of a cool thing in Word, it will automatically populate your reference page. However, you do need to make sure that you delete any of the random spaces that it adds. So right now we've got, for instance, here all of these guys. So we'll go ahead and update our citations. Here it does them live. Now these are links. So let's say that we wanted to cite a different Smith here. So we accidentally cited the 2013 Smith, but we wanted the 2017. So instead of having to delete it, you can just click on it and edit the citation. So now we can leave the placeholder one in there. And what we wanted was the 2017 version of Smith. And then we'll delete the original one, update the citation, and it'll do it all for you. So in this case, we've got the 2 different versions. Again, I'm not 100% sure what the correct way to list these is, since they do have different years. That ambiguity is like definitely if they're the same year, you would need to differentiate them with initials. If they're different years, it's still out on that. All right, so now we've got all of our references here. Now you'll notice that we've got 2 uses of the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. So for the first one, you'll need to add the bracket to let the reader know that that's what you're doing. And here's one of my biggest gripes with PaperPile, is that when I update the citations, it changes them back. So you will need to figure out your kind of own way to make sure that you remember to do that. In my case, what I do, and you see they're highlighted. We will unhighlight them, make sure that I show this. Right, so what I do with these is after the citation, I just add a comment, right? And say something like, make sure to use, right? This way, we've got a note to ourselves. And then when we're done with it, we can either resolve the thread or delete the thread. And that way it kind of keeps you straight. If you don't do this, then you may have issues later on, because anytime you mess with anything that PaperPile does, it will revert back. Again, not a perfect process, but if that's all I have to do rather than, run the risk of making the same mistake 15 times, then I will absolutely do that. So in this case, there was not a formatting issue with these. Again, it'll put in exactly what you need. And in this one here, so I corrected the public law, but there was definitely a reference where I did not. So one of the other problems with these citation managers is if you don't check on them and learn to depend on them, or you can't spot the difference between the citation types, you'll run into issues if they're wrong. So this isn't meant to be a replacement for learning APA. It's supposed to make your life easier. So if you're like a beginning undergrad student, use this by all means, but learn the APA stuff so that you can at least figure out when it's wrong. Because I'll show you another couple instances where it makes mistakes because it grabs the wrong information. So another cool thing, we don't need to necessarily search by the author. We can search for keywords. So in this case, public law. So this now brings me all of the things, including if we have public law in an abstract. So good practice, you can copy and paste the abstract from your study right into PaperPile. I'll show you how to do that next. But this is one of the ones where there's an issue with how the citation works. So now if we go to this Christensen and Card, down at the bottom, we see that public law is lowercase. It should technically be uppercase, right? Welcome to the nuance of APA. It's frustrating, but at the same time, it's kind of rewarding when you figure it out. So here we have a couple options. So we notice the mistake. We can actually edit the reference directly from PaperPile's plugin. So in this particular case, the error was up here. So we can correct the formatting mistake and save it, which it's on my picture this time. So we'll save it. All right, so now we see that it's fixed, and we'll update the citation. And now when we go down, we see that it's also fixed in the reference. So this is where reference managers are absolutely amazing, because it'll fix your problem forever. So once a mistake has been identified, you can correct it and then never have to worry about it again. Again, make sure that you know what you're looking for. Like, that's really important, because otherwise you'll never really get it. And you want to get it. That's kind of the whole thing here. Another thing, so my university requires all the hyperlinks to be active. So you can see if we click on it, it's not active. I'm guessing this just makes professors' lives easier because they can just click on the link rather than copy and pasting. So it's now up to you to do all the copying and pasting. Luckily, easy thing, right? We just highlight it, Control K will pop this up, and you can then have your highlighted hyperlink. The formatting stuff, since these are all kind of active, sometimes it'll highlight everything for you. But as you can see, now we've got the link done, and it's not too hard of a chore to Control K and enter if you highlight all of your sources. So I'm working on a little script in Visual Basic to do this for me because I find it annoying. Right, I love research, formatting stuff has never been my favorite activity. So any way that you can give yourself a leg up is a good thing, because you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your program, and that means learning things other than just spending hours doing APA stuff. It's difficult enough learning how to research, so that's the Word plugin. Again, you've got a whole bunch of different options. You just need to make sure that you're aware of the nuances, and you'll learn some of this stuff as you go through. So you'll still spend probably an hour just going over citations, for a small 3,500 word paper, because there's so many different things. And as you move through the graduate level, you'll do a lot more synthesis. So essentially, you're just saying, hey, a bunch of these people do this. Another place where it's a little difficult is when you really want to emphasize a study. So, for instance, I care mostly about the 2010 study. You need to do like a see all, or also see, or see also, whichever one it is. You'll have to do that manually. And then, like I said, just make sure that you comment it so that you remember in your final review after the last time you update them, so that, you don't make a simple mistake. Because at the end of the, I've lost more points to simple mistakes that have been technology faux pas than they have actually quality of research. So next we'll go through and kind of look at how to make sure that when you do your sources, because this is the most interesting part, is not having to input all this data manually. There are cases, specifically with some journals, depending on how they publish their work, that it becomes a bigger issue. So sometimes manually importing a citation is the best option. So let's go through that part next. All right, so now let's head over to the funnest part about this. How easy is it to get your citations and references into PaperPile? So I've got a couple journals open in other windows to kind of give you guys an idea of the different nuances and some things to look out for. So we'll start with an easy one. So Jake is a pretty good journal that I use quite a bit. And here we've got a random study that's got a DOI listed. All right, so down here we see the recommended citation. So this is always good to look at because it gives you a lot of the basics, regardless of the style that they use. The easiest way to do this is we've got a DOI, and we can copy that DOI, and then by doing the search online function, directly add it into PaperPile, and it has all the information, right? So now we can add it and then view it. So with Jake, it will automatically pull up the actual article and add it. So you've got it all in there and you're all good to go. So what we'll do for this one, I'm going to have this open in another window here. And we'll go through it. So we've got the reference. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you edit it to make sure that everything is correct. So in this case, the author translated perfectly. We've got our issue number, our volume number, and we've got the URLs and DOIs. So depending on how you need this cited, you can leave one or both of these in here. Either way, it's okay. So we've got a good one, right? So now we have our journal article all set and good to go. Now all we need to do is cite it and it'll translate over perfectly. One of the ones that I consistently have issues with is the Journal of Aviation, Aerospace Education and Research. So this is Embry-Riddle's journal. Amazing papers in here, but there is an issue with importing papers. So for instance, this one is exactly why it's an issue. So we've got our abstract here and we've got our DOI and the suggested citation. This is important. So we'll grab the DOI and we'll head over to PaperPile and we will add it in here. And already we can see there's some issues, right? So we'll add this in, and when we view, so again, this time it also grabbed our article for us. So any of these open journals, it'll easily grab. The big issue is with how the header information is pulled off. So we can see here, so for instance, the very first author, they have to add their title to it, and that causes issues with the way that PaperPile reads it. So we've got Tim Riley, who is a PhD. And in this reference, when we edit it, we can see down here at the bottom that it has pulled the PhD as part of the name. Right? So, which in this case, the middle name, you can manually go through, delete it, and all their random titles that they've added in here. All right, and now we see that we have a properly formatted citation at the bottom. Well, sort of. So we need to make sure that we've got the appropriate commas and semicolons. They don't always translate over. So this is why it's good to have the actual PDF open so you can do the preview button and then you can see here. So we've got Riley Tim, that went over fine. This person, Karam, is actually G Jr. That has made this McBroom. McBroom came over okay. Elvira Marquez came over okay. Chris Campbell came over okay. But we have this random thing at the end that we need to delete. So this journal is probably the worst one as far as, I don't even know where it got Ike, as far as things not carrying over properly. So this is the most important thing that you need to do to make sure that everything actually translates over. It's gotten me quite a few times. Double check the issue, volume, DOI, and all that good stuff. So these ISSNs, they don't show up in the citation, but they're good to have if you're looking for the journal later. So that is handling a riddle journal, which these are the ones that have given me the most trouble in that regard. So another kind of good thing to look at. So we see there's no abstract in here. If you load the PDF preview, you can see you can highlight stuff. So what I usually do is I will grab Control C and Control V, the highlight. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If not, just open it up separately and copy and paste the article in there. That's the most, so we can, there we go. So we've got a loss of control thing. So we'll copy it and paste the abstract in here. This is awesome because now when you have this, so for instance, if we type in the loss of control, we will now find both of these articles that were about it, which is really nice because when you're looking for articles to support your points or like are thematically adding them in an Excel sheet, you can look for keywords just by browsing this little search bar. The last journal that I'll show you is Car International. So this one also has some interesting nuances. We'll grab a random peer-reviewed one. So make sure you grab the DOI, not somebody's ORCID ID. In this case, it's gonna have to be another click, or maybe it's 2 clicks. We'll open up the PDF. So we've got everything here, and then they don't use a DOI. They have this Oklahoma State URL, but that also works just fine. So we can paste the URL in here, and now we found it. Now, Car has an issue where since it's using this, you see it's designated as a website. So you'll have to open it up and change the type to journal article. And now we see that we've lost all of the author information. All right. This is, again, not a big deal. We can open up the preview and then you manually type in this information. So in this case, and you can just type in the first initial since that's all that the citation cares about. You'll have to type in all this stuff manually. But once you do, it will automatically update everything. All right, so that's kind of some of the nuances that I wanted to show. PaperPile is not perfect, but I have found it is an excellent way to manage these. You can also group them. So for instance, if you're working on a paper for a class, you can tag individual papers and then just move them directly into a folder. So that way you can kind of stay organized. For me, I just kind of leave them all lumped in because I can just search through here. You can also tag these, which is another cool function. So by using the tag function, like I have one for textbooks. So I upload my textbooks in here so that I have access to them and all my highlights are persistent. So in case I move computers, I literally have access anywhere. But you can do the same thing and create a class tag and then you can filter by tag. So for instance, if I now wanted to see every one of my textbooks, I could just click on this label here. In this case, I guess I've deleted all my textbooks, but all the labels will show up here and then you can just click on them and it'll pull up every document with that. So a good use for that. So let's say that you're writing a paper on, I don't know, the sun's effect on ice cubes, right? You could type it, use ice cubes as a label or sun as a label. And then as you're going through your process, you can then have them nicely categorized even within folders. So, for instance, this was one for my capstone project. I just set them as favorites and that worked out for me. It'll let you know which ones are your really high impact papers and which ones you're just kind of using to build up your sources, right? So where's your primary source? And what's neat is this will also show up in Word. Same thing, you can search by tag if we're in Word. Like let's say we're adding a citation. Well, hold on, let me find it. So let's say that we're adding a citation here. We can search by tag, right? And that will also help. You can also search articles and books. I don't use this feature too much because it tends to only search for keywords and titles or abstracts if they're in the catalog. So depending on what the journal does, it may or may not be helpful. But that's it as far as a preview of PaperPile and how you can use it to make your life a lot easier. Like I said, as you progress through any of your degree programs from undergrad to PhD, everything that you've ever used, you will now have a nice catalog of papers. So if you need to reference back, say you're writing a paper on, I don't know, human factors, right? We can just type in the keywords and we've got all of our papers that are relevant, and then you can narrow it down from there. Other reference managers work kind of the same way, but I've found that this one, for the price, has been the most helpful. We'll see if that continues to be the case, but for now, I definitely recommend PaperPile as a good reference manager. Let me know if you guys are interested in a formatting video, so I'll give you a little teaser on that, but I really love Perla for formatting. So if you haven't been familiar with Perla, one of my most awesome professors in undergrad helped me with this. All right, so for Perla, we'll just keep a really quick walkthrough here.
essentially what Perla does is it does all of your formatting for you. Where PaperPile will do only your references, in Perla you actually have a built-in reference manager that will have all of your references and citations. The process is a little bit more straightforward for me in PaperPile as far as keeping track of them and making them searchable, but Perla is an excellent choice, especially for undergrad where you use the source once and then don't really need it. The other really cool part is all the formatting is done for you, so you can see this is a title block. So we can click on it, change, for instance, the name, and when we update the title page, it will update it for you with formatting. So in the new version, I notice it also allows you to use an author's note. This version didn't. But for instance, we've got our abstract, keywords. All of this is formatted according to the current APA style. And you can do really cool things. So for instance, you may want to add a title page. These things are unwieldy at best to do in Word, but here we just click a button and it will then add a title page based on your headings. It'll have the correct page numbers. They're displayed here as, I guess, the hashtag sign now. But when you actually write your paper or export it, it'll show it properly. It also does a great job as far as all of your, if you add figures, figures will be displayed in APA format. It does all the italicizing. You can add citations directly in the text. So as many pictures as you want. It'll also do perfectly formatted tables and pretty much anything else that you need that would belong in an APA paper. When you go to the very bottom, we see it also does all of these for you. So when you click on it, it shows you the reference in the right-hand pane, and you can make any changes you need here as well. Again, this is a perfectly fine reference manager. I'm just not a big fan of the lack of searchability. You can't put abstracts and stuff in there. But you can essentially write your whole paper from start to finish. You can do an outline. You can add your research notes in here as well to particular references, so kind of like the highlight feature. And then you have your entire list of references. You can go and actually create a outline to start with, then insert the outline into the paper. Same deal, you can keep all of your references, but rather than highlighting here, you just add a note, and there's no way to attach the PDF, which is really important to me, so I don't really use this as a reference manager per se. You can't import references, so for instance using PaperPile and then adding them to Perla doesn't work, but you can add them to you have a library here, so this is essentially all of the papers that you've ever used in Perla, so you can add them to the paper. The ones in green are actually attached, but again, a little different, and I'm not a huge fan of their references. But that's Perla in a nutshell. It really does manage everything. There's also version tracking. If you're writing a paper in this, I use Google Docs. Maybe I'll make a video on why at some point, but there are specific reasons for Google Docs because it has some features that aren't available elsewhere through extensions. But that's it for today. I know it was a long video, but I hope you found it helpful. Let me know if there's something else that interests you, and maybe we can make a video and make your life just a little bit easier. Thanks.